Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. I'm your host, John Drohan from Main Effort Financial. I'm joined with my dear friend and co-host for the last 12 plus years, Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group. And of course, we are also joined by the one and only Tom Harmon. Yeah, Tommy,
baby.
Tom Harmon from the Holliston Hub / HCAT, who is our executive producer for all of everybody who wants to see this on TV.
All things great, all
and
things
this
real.
is, and of course, as a little reminder, this is Money in the Law, where we talk about all things about finances and money and that
lawyer
stuff.
type stuff.
And then we talk about the law, like the law.
We actually change our voice.
You know what we do? You do.
We change your tone, right?
Yep.
The money side's a little lighter. It's a little upbeat,
laying
right?
down the law.
And then we get to the law
Lay
part.
down the
We
law.
Bring it down an octave.
This is the law.
Bring it down an octave.
That's the law.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yep.
Talk slower.
Yep.
Yep.
Just like it. Right. If I was on a bench for somebody. Yep.
That's right.
I'll allow it.
Yep. That bench. Not like you're not sleeping on a bench because of poor decisions.
Not sleeping on a bench, or sitting on the end of a bench. On my
if you were actually
my
wearing
high
a black
school
robe.
basketball
Got
team.
Got it.
That.
Okay.
All right. So some great radio right there.
Gold.
Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell. Swell, fine. I was trying to put those together.
Swine?
That would be swine. Doing swine. Yep, everything's great. No complaints. Everything's fine. Everything's good. All good. And like I tell everybody, even if there were complaints, who's listening? Nobody.
Well, now there's several
the radio
thousand
world is
of
listening.
you.
Great point. Excellent point.
Now people are.
So you want me to just go on a rant for like 45 minutes?
No. Let's talk about something people are interested in. I mean, not that they're not interested in your
anything we talk about.
But
That's right.
But they are. And Tommy, you doing all right? Tommy, yeah.
Great. Tommy, big smile, thumbs up.
Always happy to be here.
Yep.
All right, so one of the things we were kind of just touching on
as we were preparing for the show.
As we prepare for the show, was Ray. Ray was in here, and Ray had a gallon of water, like a whole gallon of water. So
I thought he was like walking around, watering plants or something.
Right?
That's what I thought. I mean, even though they're all fake, I didn't know. Maybe he doesn't know that.
He doesn't know.
This thing seems to be dying over here. It's
not going to hurt.
It's still dying.
The thing's still going, right?
Yeah. But I thought he was watering plants.
The plastic plant is withering.
Yes.
You're in trouble.
Even the plastic plant's having a tough time of it.
So I said to him, I said, hey, are you doing 75 hard? And he was like, well, 75 hard, what's that? So it was funny. So then we kind of did the whole, and for those of you who don't know.
We coached him up on it.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what 75 hard is, it's that kind of lifestyle fitness, kind of cult, for lack of a better term, because our friend who did it, Tommy Campersall, who's Campersall did it, and he was, he's legit. He committed
like $1 million. Yeah.
He was put himself in great shape for the softball season. But he will be the first one. He goes, yeah, it's a little cultish.
Yes.
Yeah. But we were talking about 75 hard, and the concept of it is it's kind of cool in that you commit to something, right?
Absolutely.
It's a commitment.
And in theory, it's got a finite window, right? So you say to yourself, this isn't something that's going to go on forever. It's kind of like people used to do P90X. People used to do CrossFit.
Remember that?
Used to do Orange Theory. All these different versions.
There's no end to it, though.
But that's right. It just becomes this thing that you just go to. So the 75 hard is a window, right?
Yeah.
So you get a window. For those of you who don't know, go ahead. It is.
So for just a quick review, 75. So you do this thing for 75 days. Then there's some rules, some kind of basic rules to it. So the first thing is that you have to do workout twice a day for 45 minutes. 2 separate 45-minute workouts, and one of them has to be outside. And it could be anything from going to the gym or walking outside, going for a run.
Move around.
Yep, you got it. Right. And then then you have to go on some sort of diet. There's some you have to, whether it be a low carb Atkins, whatever you pick.
Change your eating habits.
You pick the diet, right?
Yep.
You have to read from a self-improvement book at least 6 pages a day.
Yep.
So
the Herald, the Boston Herald does not count. You got to read something.
Again, this is going from memory. And one of the big things is you have to drink a gallon of water every day. And that's one of those things, like, you got to kind of get after that in the morning, because if you're at the end, you got like 3/4 of a gallon to drink. It's like no water.
It's like getting ready for colonoscopy, right? You got to force that down, right? Nothing says comfortable like force feeding yourself a half gallon of water.
Nothing says a great night's sleep with a gallon of water in your stomach.
That's right.
Especially when you're middle-aged. Yeah,
that's exactly
when you're a
right.
middle-aged man.
So you've never done it?
I kind of toyed with it, and and of course, Haley and I, we toyed with it in the sense that we're doing, like, we called it 75, not quite as hard as you think.
Yeah. 75 soft.
Yeah, 75. Maybe we'll just drink on.
And no alcohol.
And that's the big one. And at the end of the day, there's no alcohol. So you and the rule of thumb is that you can't that if you violate any of these rules, any of like the kind of the commandments of 75 hard, then you have to start over.
That's right.
And you start from day one.
Day 74, you can't get that second workout in. You go all the way back to the beginning.
You got to make it happen.
That's right.
So in that respect, that kind of commitment and doing something that's uncomfortable is I like that. I like the concept. But so I talked to my daughter, to Lily, about it, and Lily is like, that is the stupidest thing, because in her generation, so Lily, she's in that kind of 20s, in the mid 20s something generation. There's people kind of take it to the next level, and these are kids who are probably like, these are like her age.
Sure.
And they're like,
time on their hands.
They got time on their hands. They have. They don't have like the kids or anything to kind of to do all that.
They have no other obligation
other than
waking up.
Yeah.
Other than waking up.
Exactly. And going to, and they probably
and sometimes even that squishy.
Yeah, and they go to and they go to, and so she was like she tossed her nose at it, like, this is like, I can't, I'm so sick of it, because again, on social media, and that's the other thing I want to say, there's like not that you have to post it on social media
to track your progress,
but
just for them to take a picture of yourself in the beginning.
That's
I think they want to take a picture every day.
I think it's a daily
every
picture.
day. Yeah, that's what I want. 75 pictures of me.
75 pictures of me just getting better. I mean, it's bad enough. It's funny. So
that's like in a triple secret password locked. I might have to buy a separate computer to store that, a burner phone. Like, that's not.
Jay's flexing pictures.
That's the last thing I need is that thing rolling into my website.
Right. And then God forbid, right? You're taking your picture of yourself on the scale, and you don't want to like have any extra weight on. I have no clothes in it. I just happen to take my picture. And there's a reflection.
Someone's doing your new website over there, like, oh, John's pictures. This must be his headshots.
What do you know?
I mean, drop one of these in here. Wrong.
What do you know?
And
John's weighing in at 221.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yep.
And that's a good weight, because he doesn't have anything else on, as we all can see.
That's right.
Unless he's wearing a hat.
It's quite exposed. So I the problem with me for 75 hard is, okay, I can't find a 75-day window where there's not an opportunity to be like, we're probably gonna have a couple of cocktails, right? So that's my challenge, right? These are
75 days.
You're like, let's see, it's not gonna be March for all the obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, you got to pick your month, right?
Well, you got to pick your 75 days, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh man, I can't do March. April, I don't know. There might be a vacation in there. There might be Easter in there. There might be a time to get together. Might want to have a couple. Might have a couple.
There
drinks
might be
in there,
Easter.
right? You're gonna get to May. You're gonna be like, oh, May, Cinco de Mayo. Like if you're a celebratory individual, it's hard to find some time.
It's 3 months.
Yeah.
It's 2 and change, right?
Yeah.
So it's like 2.5 months. So it's real time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, I mean, again. It involves this thing that we're not really used to. It's called sacrifice. There's
sacrifice and discipline don't seem to be the tenets of either one of the things we're talking
sacrifice. About. But I would say, the one thing I thought was going to be the hardest part about it is, I think I did it for about 75 minutes.
Yeah.
But the one thing I thought was going to be the hardest part would be the beer, right? The alcohol, right? And I think if you kind of tell yourself that this is what if you that part, I think you can get by.
Sure.
It'll be tricky, and then of course when you're out with people, it'll have to be the thing, right? You're like, oh, Jay, he's doing 75 hard.
Guys, I'm passing on those.
Yeah.
75 hard for me.
Which of course you could do. Of course,
not a big deal.
It's not a big deal. And then the other side of that is, I mean, how many times have we said that this conversation where you're like, hey, I didn't drink last night, and you know what? Wow, I slept great. What do you know? Oh my God, I got up early, and I got caught up with everything.
I went to the gym on a Monday. Oh my God, go figure. I mean,
right?
Even the people at the gym didn't recognize me.
So there's like these benefits of like,
there are some benefits.
You know what? Wow, what do you know? I feel really good. And this has been 2 weeks, and I'm sleeping good.
So much energy. My skin's cleared up. I feel like $1 million. Lost 5 pounds.
And
it's unbelievable.
I lost 5 pounds, and I even started that diet bit. Yeah. So I don't know. I do in concept. I like it. The culty piece of it, like the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It's like a thing and gives it a little bit of notoriety.
I think that we talked about before the show. We're joking about this. That second workout is probably the hard. Like that's
Yeah, that's the hard
like
part.
If you have
It's
a
the
lot
time.
going on, yeah. If you have a lot going on, and you're like you get out of work and you're going to go to a meeting, or you're going here, or you're going here. Like it's your life doesn't have that the routine to like squeeze in that second workout. That's the challenge.
Well, but here's the thing, and you may very well be able to do it, but it's going to come at the expense of something else. So
Sure.
so the sacrifice of me not drinking, that's on me. That's my own.
That's
That's
right,
me.
that's right. That costs you nothing.
But the sacrifice of, hey, I'm not going to be able to. Oh, my kid's home from school. Hey, Dad, do you want to come with me to
Right.
whatever? Oh, I got to do my 75-minute or 45-minute
Would I rather go
ride
to
or
Target
whatever.
with my kid or do the workout?
Yeah.
I'd much rather spend time with my kid. So you're like, all right.
So I lose that
opportunity.
opportunity. So I don't do that. And then by the time, and then it's like 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, you haven't seen your wife all day, and you're like, oh, maybe we should talk a little
Yeah,
bit. And you're
I'm
like,
gonna do my workout.
I'm gonna go do my workout because I'm
I know.
75, because I'm day 40, And
I
it's,
don't want to mess it up.
so that's
I know.
that's the tricky part.
All right, so we've come up with all the reasons to avoid 75 hard right here on the show. You're welcome, by the way.
So-
everybody who is contemplating as the weather gets nice, you're welcome. This is your.
So
this is your
here's
pass.
our challenge. This is what I think what you and I should do. What you and I should,
we go.
because
Here we go.
we're not the dumbest guys in the room.
Yep,
But
yep.
you know what? I think we should put our heads together and do something that is more reasonable and applicable to kind of people in our in our age
The
bracket.
money. We'll come up with the money and the law challenge.
The money and the law challenge. We'll come up with, and whatever, that maybe we'll call it that. I don't know. I mean, we may be able to come up with something, but it's the money and maybe for spring, like a good kind of, kickoff for spring. Tom, look at Tom. Tom's
already in there.
Yeah.
How about this? So let's explore this a little bit. Not on the whole show here today, but maybe a money in the law challenge. Maybe some benefit to a charity on the back end. So if somebody does, you don't have to start from 75 again, but you get to pony up a couple of bucks, and the bucks all go to a good cause, and we can figure something out.
I mean,
build a little community around something like this. We could have some fun.
I think it's starting to sound good. Like Tom's nodding his head. He likes
Yeah,
it. Right?
he's not in on it, but he's agreeing it. He's going to film it. He's going to film it.
Tom's like,
he's going
I'll
to
be
watch us all
damned if I'm
fail.
like,
Yeah,
no,
watch
thank you.
Watch
No,
the
thank-
tailspin.
Yeah. So and we'll lay it out. We'll do this for the next show. We'll
figure it out.
set this up.
We'll lay out the blueprint.
and lay it out for everyone. And then we will then challenge. There's plenty of people that I can think
I
of.
can think of
that
a whole
can
bunch of people that can
right?
challenge this. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
challenge to do this, and we'll figure out what the parameters are of it. It won't necessarily be 75.
Won't be as burdensome. We'll call it that.
Well, it'll be more.
It'll involve a commitment.
And it'll involve a little bit of sacrifice.
Sure, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it'll be realistic.
Yeah.
And so working out could be playing golf.
That's exactly right.
Oh,
That's
you were
exactly
thinking that.
right.
Going to the
That's
driving range.
That's
Yep.
right. That works. That counts.
Yeah,
That counts.
that's
that counts.
right. All right. I got some ideas. All right, so we'll
All right,
follow that. All
quick
right.
break. We'll come back. We'll talk about our surprise topic today. We've been kind of keeping that on
The
the
surprise
QT.
topic.
There is
Oh
a
my God,
surprise topic. There is
it's
a topic.
surprise. All right. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
And you're back, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, here in the My FM Media Center. I'm going to read this quote right off the wall. Without a sense of caring, local radio would be extinct. But with an unwavering commitment to community, local radio is immortal. Spoken those words by the great Tom McCall, president of My FM Media, and our
His
fearless
lips to
leader,
God's
our
ears.
fearless leader. So we're here talking money in the law. We're talking 75, not so hard, and we're talking about some type of maybe a commitment, maybe a springtime commitment to get everybody rolling post St. Patrick's Day. So
Yeah.
you get a chance to swing from the chandeliers on the 17th.
I like
and
how
then
this.
we'll,
Whoa! I like how this thing. That's the first time I heard that.
slide
this
that
thing
right
is
in there.
starting after the
This kicks off
17th of
on
this month.
March, maybe the 19th. You might need evacuation day off to kind of get yourself, get yourself up and ready to roll. So
Spring commitment.
That's
Spring.
right.
We'll come up with that name. I'm thinking about it right now.
right.
It's
All right.
definitely something with spring. This is about springtime because
there
you
you
know
go.
what?
Spring into summer. Spring into summer. That's the title right there.
I don't know. We'll
We'll
think
work on it.
all right,
We'll
we'll
work
work.
on it.
Yeah,
We'll
the
work on
spring. But that's a good reason to do it, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're gonna be a little more fit, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's going to
getting
be
a
bathing suit
yeah.
season before you know it. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's right. So ready to
Speedo
roll.
season before
Ready
you
to
know
roll.
it.
That's
Right.
right. So we're talking before the break, during the break actually, about our topic for the day. This actually is a request from a client who I talked to on the phone this week, and she said, followed a bunch of your stuff. I looked at it, and I'd love to see you guys touch on the topic of thoughts and suggestions around divorce. What do you tell people? How do you kind of handle it? How do you look at it? What do you, how do you sort of move into it? And I said, yeah, well, absolutely tackle it. So, so that's what we're going to talk about today. We talk about your planning perspectives, or perspectives from a planning peace of mind when it comes to divorce on the legal side and the financial side. And we'll start with you. What do you guys? What do you talk about when you talk about clients?
Well, I mean,
whether they're contemplating it or they're just on the other side of it and they've gone through it.
Well, the contemplating part is like you're in the grand scheme of things, you'll always kind of want, if there's especially if there's children involved, if there's an ability to kind of work through this, because it's a big decision, right?
That's right.
It's a big decision. So at that point, you got to say, look, this is going to be a life-changing thing, and it's going to be life-changing not just for you and for your spouse, but for everybody else. So there's that piece of it. But if they, if kind of the decision's been made,
that's the path,
and that's the path, then again, in our practice, we've kind of seen, the whole gamut, the whole spectrum of kind of, very reasonable and amicable divorces to people who stay, who continue to fight and continue to fight about it for years after, years and years
Ad
and years.
infinitum, yep.
Almost like never ending. So the first thing I'll say is that I'm like, look, what you don't want to do is you don't want that. You don't want to you want to kind of figure out how it's going to work, and then you want to bring it to, and then you want to have closure. You want to have closure, and you want to everybody can move on. And especially when you have kids involved, that's the hardest part, because they're the ones who are going to be affected by this. So we all know people who have been divorced, and like family members and things like that. So you kind of see look. You want them to focus on what's the most important thing. And unfortunately, in the money world, people get stuck on money, right? They get stuck on and they have this feeling where I'm going to get ripped off, or I'm going to come up on the short end of the stick. And you hear all these stories about like, oh, he got screwed in the divorce, he got cleaned out, and there are some cases where definitely things don't kind of come out evenly, right?
Well, that stuff all gets hammered out on the legal side of the aisle, right? Like, if there's not a mediation where everybody is in complete agreement that we're going to split everything down the middle and it's somewhat amicable, then it's going to get contested. It can get a little messy, right? And there's going to be at some point there's going to be a property settlement, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an alimony discussion about whether or not someone's getting alimony. There's a child support.
Well, that's always the big one, yeah.
Right? That's the big one. And then at some point there's the property settlement, right? And the judge is going to decide, like, okay, this is what's going to happen. The house is either getting sold, or the house is going to be sold at some to be determined point in the future. But question for you, and this is what came up from the client's perspective, was somebody rolls into your office and they're getting divorced, or they've gotten divorced, and you originally had represented husband and wife, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how do you guys approach that? What's your take on that? So now you've got two separate entities that before had been about as joint can be. How do you guys tackle something like that? The client was asking me, what should my move be here? And I said to them, talk to your advisor. Find out what their policies are.
That's tricky.
Yep.
Yeah, that's tricky, and especially and as you can't represent two people from a legal standpoint. You can't say I'm going to be your attorney. I'm going to be your attorney. Especially in a divorce, unless you're doing a mediation, right?
Sure.
So kind of the same thing applies from a financial planning standpoint. Is like, look, I can once. The rule is, as for us, is once someone talks to me about money, once someone says, I have a question and I choose to answer it, then I treat them as a client or a potential client. So I have a fiduciary responsibility to them just from Jump Street. So once I get to this point where, and then I have of course a client confidentiality. So at that point, like if I have two kind of like, people that are separating, and there's a discrepancy between them, or there's this animosity between, and even if there's no animosity, even if because down the road there could be animosity, right?
Sure.
So under 99 point pick a number circumstances, we will have to make a decision as to one way or the other which person we're gonna stay with.
Right.
We normally will not stay with both.
Oh, see, that's interesting. That's kind of where I was going with that question. So that's it. So your policy is sort of based on what's going on. We feel like you can't have an allegiance to two masters, right? So you got to kind of figure out which one you're serving. And that's one of the questions that we got from a client one time was, hey, in the case of a divorce, how should it be handled by my financial advisor? And I said, well, you got to check with your financial advisor. One option is your financial advisor, either, depending on the size of the firm, they can assign you to another advisor in the firm, for example, right? And
that's true.
I said, that's one option. I said, but to be clear,
that could happen in our firm, because we have thousands of advisors.
Legions, right? Yeah. But the other piece of it was, I said to her, those two worlds are now separate. I said, and even before when you were married, and the broker dealers tell you this all the time. Even if a married couple, the wife calls up and wants to know what's in the husband's 401k,
can't do it
unless they have the authority to ask those questions. You're not going to give them the answer. Now that you're divorced, that wall is even more hard and fast. Where somebody says, "Hey, I know we separated all the assets, but I was the person, whoever it is, who handled all the money. It's amicable, John. It's amicable.
Mm-hmm.
So do me a favor. Can you tell me how much money is in their IRA, brokerage account, whatever they look at?" The answer is no. I can't tell you, right? I can't tell you. So it sounds like maybe the conversation is to the client, do you want to stay with us because we're going to represent one of you guys, and one of you might have to just decide. It makes more sense to have a new advisor.
And in our world, right? In our world, it kind of, we've had this situation, right? In our world, it kind of just. It happens naturally. Like the person who stays is usually the person that we've had the relationship with. Like, so, if it's somebody that I knew before, like if I've had like friends who were in the army, that were like, so I'm, oftentimes it kind of works itself out.
Yeah, there's a point person for the relationship, and you say, we always communicated, we always did the work with this person, and so that's really where the relationship that we're going to continue with. And then the other person, you say, look, we're not picking and choosing, but we're picking and choosing, right?
But we will say, what I will say is, we'll get you through this.
Sure.
We'll do the kind of, and again, with the full disclosure and transparency, like, look, I can't play sides here.
Sure.
I can't say, hey, I can't give you information. You can't ask me questions about stuff that I can't say. Everything that needs to be, and I'm not an attorney, right? I'll be like, look, this is going to be stuff for your lawyer. This is going to be stuff for the judge to figure out if you're going to go, if you're going to take it to court. So at the end of the day, I'm just like a facilitator to kind of try and make this as amicable and as clean and I don't get to judge to determine what's fair and what's not.
Well,
right?
And you bring up a great point, right? So from a mechanic's perspective, you guys get to come in on the operation side and say, look, you guys had joint accounts. I will help you split them up based on whatever your divorce agreement is, right? So now it goes into account A and account B. And then once all that work is done, then the client can say, okay, now we're moving our relationship from you guys, the one who's moving, right? From you guys to wherever it's going to go, right? And that probably is a good, just from a policy perspective, it just makes it much easier. And the client, and you can just say, look, we wish you well, but we don't want to create a conflict for anybody.
Yeah, but I also will weigh in. I'll also give my opinion on things when like my interpretation. So one good example is we had clients who are getting divorced, and there was, so one of the clients called me and said, hey, this is what the mediator, this is what my soon-to-be ex wants to do. This is what they're offering this, and this will be the settlement. And I have to kind of interpret it, and it involved real estate, right? So they'll say, well, listen, what you'll do is you'll give me, I'll get to keep my whole 401k, and then you'll buy me out of half the house, and the 401k and the house are the same, the same amount of money. We'll call it $200,000, right?
Yep.
And I'll be like, oh, well, hold on a second. There's value to both of those things, but there's different kind of value. So remember, $200,000 in a 401k is different than $200,000 as equity in a house.
Cash money, yeah.
Because one has never been taxed and the other one is tax-free.
Right.
Is essentially tax-free, right? As long as there's no capital gains involved. And that, you have the $500,000 while you're still married, that still applies. So the whole idea of say, oh, that's dollar for dollar. I'll oftentimes have to kind of explain, all right, it's not dollar for dollar, right? And then at the same time, when someone says, well, listen, I'll just keep my 401k and you can keep the house. Well, that's different too. There's a depending upon what the number is, because think about having $400,000 or $200,000 in a 401k. That's a retirement account. Right. That's a tax deferred retirement account that you can't just write a $200,000 check and put into a tax-deferred account and have that immediately happen.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
I mean, you could put it into an annuity or something like that.
Right. But for you to say, for every time you take a dollar out of that retirement account, Uncle Sam's going to have his hand up. There could be a penalty depending on how old you are. So, you're right. That the $200,000 in cash in your house, which you could either convert to cash by selling it, or you get a home equity line or something like that. You have access to cash that doesn't involve giving away some type of fees or penalties or taxes.
So sometimes in those situations, I'll have to kind of explain. All right, let's kind of compare apples to apples and make sure that everybody understands like what the finances are. And this is often for times for people who want to mediate, right? They want to kind of do the easiest, least amount of cost. And that's another thing. I'll say, look, if it's possible, if you guys can get to that point, then that's the way to go.
Right.
Because, and again, no offense, I don't know if I can say this in front of the lawyer, but I mean, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. In those dragged out divorce cases, everybody loses except for two guys.
Yep.
Right? And it's the two lawyers.
Oh,
right?
More, we tell the people all the time. We jokingly tell people, I mean, more lawyers, right, makes things better.
Yeah.
And everybody laughs and rolls their eyes because they get it. More lawyers don't make things better, right?
Well, and this is a good, because I want to talk about, I want to hear you talk about kind of the legal side of it, because I'll tell people, you know, because again, the other thing is, remember, this is a very emotional thing too,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
So you bring in the emotion part of divorce, that there's, and of course, with emotion, you think, this is the first time this has ever happened to anybody, right? I'm in this totally unique situation, but as you well know, that the judge the divorce judge, they see this 30 times a day, every day.
And so does your divorce lawyer. They
And
get a stack of cases on their desk. Some of them going easy, some of them going hard, all around these issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's an emotional time. It's a sad time. It's a life-changing time. So this is where you want to just kind of make it as pain-free as possible, you know, and that's our position, is like, look, we'll make sure, and I also tell people, like, people get hung up on the money, like this and then. I'm like, look, the money's going to work itself out. Right. Like once the judge determines kind
that's
of
just math. That's just math.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
The hard part that we run into, we see this on the legal side, is somebody's dragging their feet.
Oh, well, that's
that's a different animal. That, you know, the judge said we have to do these things, and that many of these things that you have to do are going to require a little bit of cooperation, 2 signatures, things like that. And that's usually where there's a problem, where somebody says, yeah, I'll get to it. And it's usually because they're trying to kind of give a stick to somebody else, because they're just dragging their feet on. Right. I know you want to break that brokerage account up, and we'll get to it when I get to it. I'm super busy. I can't fill out the paperwork, and it becomes really hard to do. And that's where someone's just really looking to poke the bear.
I like the super that.
You like that?
Comes,
You like that?
It comes with that.
It comes with that.
It comes with like that. Right.
Yep, that's right. That's how we
Spirit
approach it.
hands.
That's how we approach it. Spirit hands is right.
Your Honor,
Spirit
may I
hands is
approach
right.
the bench?
Your Honor, I'm so excited to be here today. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. Yep, that's right. That's right. Try the veal. Try the veal.
Yep. That's from your stand-up routine that
Yeah.
you used to do.
Yeah.
You did that for 9 years.
Oh, God, yeah.
The selectman.
All over the country. Yeah, all over the country. Yep. So, all right, quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit on the legal side of the divorce issue, and you're listening to Money in the Law, My FM 101.3. And we're back, My FM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group, John Drohan, Main Effort Financial. Tom furiously taking notes on all the things that he has to edit out of this show to try to clean it up and make us look borderline professional.
Tom's learning. He's like, look, I was thinking about getting married. Hold on. I'm just going to, no.
2 things. He said, number 1, my editing skills are as sharp as they could possibly be because of my work on this show. And I'm definitely not getting married.
So speaking of your work on this show, so John Souza, the official hair stylist
of the Money in the Law.
Money in the Law, from Sampson and Simoneau in Hopedale. Souza, I sent him the video, right? I sent him the YouTube video, and I'm trying to look for. I'm looking at the video. It's the first time I've watched a video in a bit, right? So I'm looking at our video of
see
like
where he shows up.
Well, yeah. So so he doesn't have to watch it. You know, he's not going to dig in, right? So I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow. Look at those 2 guys. They look a lot older than they used to. And I'm thinking, Tom, can we do something about this? Right? And now with the new microphones, I'm sideways, and I'm like, you know, like I have to do something, right? I need like a poncho.
So before you came in, Ray's giving me grief about how far away from the microphone I am.
Yeah.
Right? So Tom comes over and he goes, well, let me show you a video so you can see how far away you are. And I'm looking at him thinking to myself, am I so far away from the microphone because my stomach is rubbing up against the table? So that was kind of hurtful of Tom to do that. But that's all right. I mean, you know, he's trying to take it, you know.
And then you see...
He's in his mind saying, if there's any 2 jokers that need 72 hard, it's you 2.
Right. I like you cut it by 3 days. Yeah. You guys only do 72.
You're not going to make it 75. You're not going to make it 75.
Do Do 7. 7 days. 7 days, it'll make a difference.
75 minutes will help both of you out. Somebody have a glass of water.
Yeah,
Somebody have a glass of water.
I've been dieting for 75 minutes. I am starving.
I'm weak from hunger. Weak from hunger.
Where's the water?
That's right. That's right. So after we do 75 hard, and then we're really ready to roll, we'll be ready to go.
I cannot wait until our interpretation of 75 hard gets published, because that is going to be okay. So it's not necessarily.
We might have to come up with 2 separate versions, almost like the government, right? There's a House version and there's a Senate version. We might have to come up with our 2 separate independent ideas, and then they'll go into conference, committee conference.
You got homework.
And then they'll coordinate the 2 of them. That might be how it works.
And we'll hash it out.
Yep, that's right. Let the games begin.
Okay, so not necessarily no alcohol, but here's the alcohol restriction.
That's right. All right. Are we talking beer? Are we talking hard alcohol? Are we talking dark liquids? What are we talking?
Something tells me there's.
Talking clear liquids?
I was going to say something tells me that there may be a location difference, right?
Gin versus whiskey.
So
are we okay with that?
If I'm in Milford, Massachusetts, it is 75 hard, not one drop. Now, if I find myself south of Massachusetts in some place, like say Florida,
if you're south of Georgia, that's right. Okay, let's talk about that.
If I'm south of everything in Florida.
All right, if you're on an island, okay, you're surrounded by water and liquid, you can. Yep, that's right.
That's right. You're going to have to, right?
Yep. So we're talking before the break about sort of the, kind of conceptually how you're looking at things from a divorce perspective, because it's unfortunate the planning piece of the puzzle, we see it a lot. On the legal side, the good or bad news is when you actually get divorced, any previous estate plan you had, out the window. Out the window, right? No good.
Good news.
It kind of expires, when you're divorced, and the thing we see a lot is, when you go to court and you get the divorce decree, and the judge, if you've spent any time in the probate court, and the judge will say, Mary and Tom, you are, I'm signing your divorce decree right now, and then there's a cooling off period, basically, I forget 60 or 90 days. So you're not officially divorced until that day. So don't do anything that would be construed as single, because you're not single yet. You're not gonna be single for 60 and 90 days, and they always say you don't have to come back. That this will just automatically take place, and whatever that time period is. And I always laugh because there's always somebody who leaves the church leaves the courtroom that day, and they find out that they think they're all done. Church. They sign something, and that's where they go. They head off to a church. They go to Cabo. They go to Vegas. My divorce is fine.
Those churches, yeah.
Oh, they misfire on the counting. They do it as 2 months as 60 days. They forget that if it's a leap year, whatever comes in, somebody messes it up, and they find out, oops, So for those of you who are in that position, when they sign the paperwork, give yourself a couple extra days. Don't race right off and do it. But if you're not going to do it, then at that point we look at it and say, well, your plan as a spousal entity, your plan as a husband and wife, was that everything was going to go back and forth, right? Something happens to the husband, everything went to the wife, something away from, it was going to be, you're kind of hooked in for retirement accounts and life insurance, and you probably own property jointly. Well, now everything after your divorce, you now own it individually. So now if you had a trust before with your spouse or your significant other, whatever that was going to be, now you need to have your own plan, and your own plan is going to probably involve a trust again. And now we're really going to push to get that trust funded. Before we weren't really concerned about it. It was more of a tragedy plan. Everything was going to end up with your spouse anyway. That's not the case anymore. So now, if you had a house, now you got the house is in your name alone, we're going to start thinking about getting your trust funded, especially if there's minor kids involved. We don't want it to go through probate. We want to make sure that the trust gets funded, or the sales proceeds that you got from the house go into a trust. That becomes the first part of the plan that we try to make sure we put back in place.
And it becomes kind of a top of the list thing to do for both parties, because you want to, as we said, it's an emotional thing, and there's always kind of the money piece of it, right? There's that financial piece where they're like, I want to make sure that things that my money goes to where I want it to go. And oftentimes, more importantly, I wanted to make sure it doesn't go to where I don't want it to go.
Correct.
Yep. Yeah. So that piece of it, getting that organized again.
Well, here's another piece. You talk about being organized. In many cases, as part of some divorce settlement, the parties are required to hold on to life insurance.
Yep.
All right. So what usually happens is there's some number, I have to have a $500,000 life insurance policy that goes to my significant other. And then the rest of it, I can do whatever I want to do with it. And most people would make it their kids, right? But if there's minor kids involved and you don't have the planning in place, now we're off to probate court, and I can tell you right now, this gets complicated.
Well, that's a big thing that happens with retirement accounts,
yes,
or with these kind of named beneficiary things, because you think, they're not in. And remember, we go back to the trust, and just to kind of review for why the trust is important for us non-lawyer people.
Sure.
So the trust, remember, all the trust is a box that you put stuff in, you put your property in, right? And then on the inside that box, there's this specific instructions of what's supposed to, when you can take money out, who can take money out, who it goes to.
Right.
So that's the cool thing about the trust. So oftentimes you'll have these named beneficiary, like things that aren't in a trust, like a life insurance policy,
sure,
a retirement account, like an IRA or a 401k. And as Jay's saying, you may be required by the divorce agreement to have a life insurance policy that goes to your ex-spouse. And then the remainder of it, if you have minor children, anything that you just leave to them, and your ex-spouse, who most of the time is going to be the guardian, get the full guardianship of the kids, if you pass away, guess what comes with them? Guess what comes with the guardianship of these minor children? All of their assets. You're guarding their assets unless it's specifically controlled via a trust.
Well, and here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is your now ex-spouse, right, who's the parent of your children. First of all, depending on who you talk to at the probate court these days, they may assume automatically that they're the guardian of the kids, but not so much. So now this person, to get control of the assets for the benefit of the kids, now potentially has to file in the probate court to become the kid's conservator, because the money is yours and you're not husband and wife anymore, or you're not spouses anymore, and that money is supposed to go to the kids, not your ex-spouse. And the court's going to say, well, that's the kid's money, not the ex-spouse's money. So the spouse that you now have sort of said, look, you go your way, we're breaking up, they are now going to get dragged back into your estate plan, because we didn't make it crystal clear, if I'm not around, I want my money to go to this trust for the benefit of my kids. And we have a couple of cases where ex-spouses are getting very involved in the plan because they're watching out for their kids' interest. Even though you're not married anymore, they're watching out for their kids' interest. And so now you've got your ex-spouse potentially dealing with either your parents or your new wife or your new fiance, so it gets really confusing and it gets really messy.
Yeah.
And so your estate plan post-divorce, your estate plan really needs to be dialed in, and it needs to be somewhat, especially if there's kids involved, somewhat coordinated with your ex-spouse. Because if you're trying to all leave money to your kids, you got to kind of figure out what that looks like.
And that's the one thing that we see. We talked about kind of the whole spectrum of divorces,
sure,
they see, is that at the end of the day, you have to coordinate with if there's children, you have to coordinate. You have to be able to talk and figure out this plan and agree on this plan together. Because if not, it's going to, like Jay says, it's going to get messy. And what messy means? It means expensive, because you're going to be going back and forth to court. It means it's going to take a long time, right? It's going to drag out. It could drag out for years. And so let's say, God forbid, one of the spouses that used to be married passes away, and they have life insurance, right? And the life insurance, remember, life insurance, we talked about last show, always has a purpose, right? Yep. So the purpose of my life insurance is to provide a potential income, or to to alleviate cost for my loved ones, right?
Sure.
So in this case, if I'm divorced, it's for my children, right? And so that means if I pass away, I'm no longer earning income, but I can leave some money to help my kids to be able to afford school, which I would have.
And people do this all the time. I don't want the life insurance to go to my ex-wife.
All the time.
It's supposed to go to my kids, and my kids are 2 and 6.
Yep.
And so I'm going to put them on my life insurance policy as the beneficiary of the life insurance policy, and then something happens to you, and somebody calls the insurance company and says, I need you to cut 2 checks to these 2 kids. One of them's 2 and one of them's 6. And the insurance company goes, you're kidding, right? Like, we're not cutting a $500,000 life insurance check to a 2-year-old. They can't even fill out the paperwork. I don't care what kind of money manager they are. This is what happens, right?
They're good.
They're super.
Jay's kids were, they're always good. Yeah.
So then the insurance company is going to say to the parent, somebody needs to become the executor of that person's estate so we can give the money to them. And so now the ex-spouse isn't going to become the executor. She doesn't have standing anymore to even try to become the executor. So now you're going to deal with your ex-husband's or your ex-wife, your ex-spouse's family, who you probably don't have a great relationship with because you got divorced and there's all kinds of baggage that goes with that. So now you thought you were done with each other. You are joined at the hip throughout this project, and it's a mess.
Yeah, and even if it happens, right? Even if it happens relatively cleanly, right? And say the kids each have $100,000 that they get, right? If as a child, if I'm under 18, I can't have my own bank account. Nope. I can't sign a contract by law. I can't. So so that account is then established in mine as a Universal Transfer to Minor Act, a UTMA account, and it has to be an adult needs to sign for it. 9 out of 10 times, who is that adult going to be?
I don't know.
It could be your ex-spouse.
It could be.
Yeah.
Who's going to be in charge of the money?
Yeah.
Who's going to get appointed as the executor? And then the court's going to say, well, this money's going to go to a minor, and mom is not technically considered the guardian by the probate court, so she either has to go file for guardianship over her own kid, right? Or she's got to file for conservatorship over her own kid's money, right? So let's add some more lawyers and let's add some more docket numbers to this case so that and by the way, the whole time this is going on, we got a house over here that needs property tax paid and some maintenance and some upkeep and a gas bill and an electric bill and an insurance bill. And where's that money coming from? And then there's a car, and the car's got some car payments on it that need to be made, because what's the first thing you do after you get divorced? You go buy a sports car. So now you got a car that needs to get paid.
You don't necessarily have to do that.
Maybe it's an F-150. Either way, there's payments that need to be made. So that's happening. Or it's boat payments, right? Or it's something. I mean, there's things that need to get paid. And so this is what happens. So you think you've made this clean break. You think you've kind of moved on, and in many cases you have, but if something happens to you and you haven't done the estate planning part of it, right? Putting aside the whatever you need to do from again, if you both did your estate planning, you'd get your estate plan buttoned up, then you go see your financial person, and your financial person would say, well, let's fund the trust, let's do this, let's make sure that all of this is taken care of so we don't create a storm of chaos after we get through this whole thing. That's what happens. It's a mess.
So I guess that at the end of the day, really what you want to see happen is you want to see an agreement, right? An agreement on everything. Like, okay, and it always kind of, and we always start with the non-money stuff, right?
Sure.
We start with the children, right? So you're divorced, and then there's going to be some form of some form of custody, right? Joint custody, shared custody, however that works.
So on the financial side, there's a legal part of this process that has to work its way through the system, right? And then when that legal piece is over, and there's property settlement, and there's alimony, and now everybody knows what the money flow and what the money you're dealing with looks like. I think then you guys can jump in and say, okay, now we have something to talk about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And oftentimes you see it. Oftentimes one of the big contention things is the child support, right? That's always kind of the big anvil that comes down, because if one person is required to pay child support's different than alimony, right?
Yep.
So child support is after tax money. I can't deduct that money. So it's I pay taxes on it, and then I pay my ex-spouse child support up until whenever the agreement has been established, right?
Sure.
And in the horrible cases that we've seen, the divorce cases where people are like, all right, you know what, I'm just paying my child support, and that's it, and I'm not, and that's it. If you're gonna, my child support is gonna cover for everything down the road. So how many times have you seen divorced people where somebody's paying child support, and then when the kids are going to college, hey, we need to we're going to college, and we need, college is expensive. Oh, well, what about all that child support that I've been paying all these years? You're like, that's...
Well, you bring up a great point. You're talking about your money having purpose, right? I mean, we've had situations where clients would come in and say either I'm getting child support or alimony, either one of them, and I don't necessarily need the money right now, right? So I want to set up an account, or I already have an account, and I want all that money directed to that account. That's what I'm trying to do. And depending on the size of your payments, the idea could be, look, I know at some point, to your point, that this is going to come to an end, right?
Yeah.
So I need to get in front of the fact that at some point this all goes away. Now, I certainly could spend it in real time, but then when it goes away, there's a sizable lifestyle adjustment that's potentially coming my way, right? Or I can moderate it a little bit now and give myself a war chest that I'm going to use later on down the road. That doesn't happen. If that happens after the fact, you say to yourself, what'd you do with all those payments? Well, we don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many times you'll ever hear someone actually say out loud, I don't need this alimony money right now.
This is in the confines of the attorney-client confidentiality conversation that says, look, I know you don't.
I'm getting this alimony, but I don't need it. Yeah,
right.
Don't.
Well, not that
don't
they
let
don't
that
need
get
it,
out.
but what they're saying is, I'm willing to recognize that this is going to come to an end at some point, and I need to prepare for that eventuality.
Well, yeah,
The judge said they need it.
The judge said. I listened.
The judge
the judge
said they need it.
right?
Somebody says somebody with a wooden gavel in their hand says, "I need it. I need it."
The judge said, right? Yeah. So that's where, again, the emotion, like kind of the drama of this, it kind of gets revolved. That money, that ongoing, I have to pay child support. Based on what the custody decision has been, right? The joint versus shared custody is always that's a big contention right there, because remember, joint custody comes with no child support, shared custody comes with no child support for the most part, and joint custody comes with child support.
Somebody's got some payments to make.
Someone's got payments to make, and it's after tax payments, and they're paying them nonstop until you get to the child gets a certain age.
So I guess one of the suggestions that I would take to somebody is, if you're starting down this process, it's certainly, this is one of those, people say all the time, when do we call you again? Well, you call us when life events, find themselves,
this is a calling event.
This is a calling event. This is I got to pick up the phone because we're going to ask a bunch of questions. One of the questions that we're going to talk about is, well, we're going to get your estate plan buttoned up when this is all finalized, because I don't want something to happen that creates a problem and drags your now ex-spouse or your ex-spouse's family back into this situation. That's the first thing we're doing. Make sure that is buttoned up and taken care of, and make sure we have all the new players. Used to be your spouse, now it's going to be your sister or your best friend or your niece or your cousin.
Sure.
Somebody's coming in to make those decisions. That can't happen until everything's final. So you got to get the divorce piece done. Then we can tackle your new legal world order, and then at the same time, what I'm hearing is they can certainly get you guys going in terms of, look, this is where this is going. Mm-hmm. And then it sounds like on the investment side, then there's the same thing. There's the post-divorce, okay, now we have to rearrange the deck chairs because now it's you. We're thinking about you as an individual. And there may be a whole new recalibration in terms of what your retirement goals are, what your retirement time frame looks like, risk tolerance, objectives, that all could be completely different.
Let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the financial pieces. Two things in particular. You mentioned property, so the real estate, if there's a house involved, and then the retirement account. And we'll talk about a qualified domestic relation order or a quadro, which is often one of the things that we see in divorce.
Exciting.
All right, don't go away. We'll be right back on Money in the Law, Hollis and Hub, three guys hanging out, talking about not so good stuff, but it's important.
It's important to know.
And some good information to know. All right, don't go away.
And we're back, MyFM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Manafort Financial. I don't know what you're looking at over there. You're pointing to something.
I'm looking at something.
Is that like you want to see how much time we have left?
I mean, I'm just making sure that it's running, right?
It's running. It's running. Right. Works different than the other one. We have some new equipment here in the studio.
The Jay Bryan Day
looks a little different. In the Jay Bryan Day studio, so it looks a little bit different. So John wants to make sure that we're actually on the radio. So if you can't hear this right now, call the station.
It looks different, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it looks different, but it's the same. So before the break, you were talking about two things. You were talking about quadros.
Yeah.
Right, which is the paperwork that splits up a retirement account for those of the uninitiated. Yeah. And then you wanted to talk about what was your other thing you wanted to talk about?
Real estate.
Real estate.
Yeah, the property. All right. So let's go real estate first. So the oftentimes there's a house, there's property that's involved, right? And depending, and usually this isn't really that complicated, right? It's the idea of real estate. Now, granted, again, we talked about like dragging out a divorce, right? And dragging.
Putting aside the amicability factor for
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's
yeah.
assume that everybody's kind of, and has a general understanding and agreement of what's going to happen.
This is it. This is what, strictly from like the clinical financial perspective, it's not that complicated.
No.
If you've been living in your house together,
Yep.
and again, the people then you're going to have this. Well, I put down the down payment. I
Oh,
paid
yeah.
most of it.
I did most of the repairs, maintenance,
The
upkeep. Yep.
judge, most of the time, doesn't care.
It's marital property.
That doesn't care. It's joint property.
Yep.
It's you own it 50-50 together.
Yep.
And so the way it's probably going to work is if your house is worth $1 million, your house is worth $1 million, and let's say you have a $400,000 loan on it. Therefore, you have $600,000
There we
of
go.
equity in
Yep.
your house, right? At the date that is determined by the court, on this date, boom, and they'll pick a day, and that day your house is going to get valued, like there's going to be it's
That's
going
the
to be
number.
assigned a value, and that's the number of your house. Now, does the property exchange hands? Does the paperwork get done? Does somebody get bought out? Does
Yeah,
the house
exactly.
get
Yep.
sold?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So whatever the decision is,
That's all part of the horse trading.
yeah, that's the number, right?
Yep.
That's the number. So here's what, and you must have seen this happen countless times. So everybody's like, oh yeah, we're getting divorced and blah blah, and then for whatever reason, their fault, your fault, my fault, the judge's fault, and whose ever fault it is, it doesn't happen. It gets dragged out.
Yep.
I can't. Oh, am I gonna buy you out, or are you gonna buy me out, or are we gonna?
Right.
Are we gonna?
Takes a while to get resolved.
Yeah, are we going to sell the house?
Yeah.
It may take a while to sell the house.
Sure.
Right? And guess what? When you go to sell the house, I remember the judge said, this is what the house is worth on this
Yep.
day.
Yep.
Guess what? You may not sell the house for that number. You may not sell the house for $1 million. That's the way it is. It's the market, right? It
might not happen.
Yep, it might not happen. And guess what? When the house gets sold, right? What happens? When the house gets sold for $900,000, then what's the deal? Guess what? You're beholden to that number,
Right.
That day. And now, granted, there may be some language, right, that
Yeah,
says
you're going to talk. Yeah, this means the lawyers will wordsmith it and say
Yep.
based on the fair market value at the time or whatever. I mean, they're going to kind of build those contingencies, hopefully in your agreement to avoid the disagreement. They're going to build those into your contingencies, but you just don't know. You just don't know.
Right, and often, and especially if it's one of these contentious divorces, people may be like, no way, that's the number, and they may not agree to that. They may not agree to the fair market value.
Or they agree to that number, and then to your point, when you come in and say, look, guys, market forces have changed. When you signed that agreement, rates were here. Now rates are here. Your house isn't really as valuable as you thought it was going to be, and so now your equity is smaller. And then this becomes part of this whole, what am I supposed to get? Am I getting $500 from the sale of the house, whatever we get? Are we getting $500 and I got to pony up another $100 out of my retirement account? Like, this is where it starts to get messy.
And really hard and
Yeah.
hard from a financial standpoint. So this is why, like, once as you're coming to the table on this, you have to understand that there's going to be a window. There's going to be
timelines. There's timelines.
There's going to be some wiggle room as far as like how much each person is going to get.
Well, and so let's talk about that real quick, because I know we have a little bit of borrowed time here, but same idea happens when it comes to securities, right? You sit down and you say, look, I want half the brokerage account. Okay. And the brokerage account's worth $1 million, right?
Yeah.
And then however the brokerage account's invested, whatever the market does, I want that money, I want that money, I want that money. And if somebody drags their feet pushing those securities over to you so that you can make your own decisions, right, and protect your own long-term interest. And if somebody drags your feet in the market, has some event that kind of pushes the market down, or there's something in the portfolio has an event that pushes now you're really mad because you're like, look, 2 months ago that account was $1 million,
Yep.
and because you've been dragging your feet on doing what we've been told to do, which is to split that account up, I could have gone off and sold everything and locked in those gains.
That's right.
And you're sticking it to me by dragging your feet, and now that $900,000, that $1 million account is $700,000.
Yeah, and that's where the quadro or the qualified domestic relation order, that's where that kind of solves or alleviates some of that problem, in the sense that if you have a 401k, it'll get, so when you get divorced, it'll get split, right? And not sold and just put into cash. So
Right, the money stays in a retirement account.
It stays in the investments as
Yes.
well. So just the investments get, so if I own 1,000 shares of Tesla, each of us are going to get 500 shares of Tesla,
right.
and it goes into my own account. And once that account is in the name of the qualifying spouse,
Sure.
they can do whatever they want with it. To include, and this is one of the things about that I just want to bring out, one of the things that they can do is they can take that money out prior to age 59 and a half without a penalty.
Yep.
Now you'll still have to pay the tax if it's a pre-tax account, but that's one of the things that the Quadro enables you to do. So oftentimes, like financial planners, like, oh yeah, let's get that Quadro and put it into an IRA. Whoa, hold on a second, because that client of yours may need that money, right? They may need that money in order to purchase their own house or to do whatever they want to do with it, and understand that they can take. But once it goes into an IRA, then it's
the
back
IRA
to
rules. Yeah,
then it's back to the IRA rules.
Well,
So
this goes back to the conversation earlier today, which is, you may want to be talking to your financial advisor about, look, this is sort of where this thing is kind of meandering, and we always tell people you don't want to do something. You try to look a couple of moves ahead, right? You don't want to, maybe all of the money's not going to get rolled over to the IRA. Maybe if the Quadro number is 500, maybe you're taking half of it to then put onto a down payment for a new place, and the rest of it goes into an IRA. So you don't want to lock it up and put yourself in a position where you have less flexibility. This is where it might make sense to talk to somebody and incorporate that conversation with your legal conversation, which is to make sure we kind of get everything right.
Yeah, so you understand where, what you're looking at financially, and also understand maybe the imminence of. So if you're the one who's dragging it out, right?
Yep.
Let's say you're the one who's like, I don't care, let them sweat it out, right?
Sure.
And you're like, okay, so guess what? If this is the number, the way your divorce agreement is going to get written up, the number is like your house is worth $1 million. Can you imagine if this was, I don't know, call it 5 years ago? Let's say you had a condo in Boston that was worth $5 million, or I'm sorry, $1 million 5 years ago, and I'm going to drag this thing out. And then, oh, by the way, this thing goes 2 more years, and your $1 million condo is now worth $2 million.
Sure.
$2 million. And you're like, whoa, I should be getting some of that. Oh no, I'm sorry. Remember, you said you were adamant that this is the number that is going to.
You wanted.
Yeah,
this is
the number you wanted. And then your ex says, oh, thanks. I'll happily buy you out.
Yep, absolutely. For the $1 million. Here you go. Right now, I'm loving life. Yep. Yeah. Easily getting the mortgage. It's all good.
All right. So the bottom line is, don't get divorced if you can work it out, because it's very complicated. However, if that's the way your path leads, then the best thing to do is to do your very best to try and, if there's children around, put them first, and then try and work things out as
get your advisors involved. Get them involved early so they can speak to some of these issues, so you make some good decisions, and there's more questions that can be asked that might bend things a little bit more in your favor and make things easier.
And in the end, it could save you a ton of money if you're as opposed to dragging out and going back and forth to court.
All right. We're good.
That's it.
Go.
That's it. We're good to go. All right. So remember, the Money in the Law Spring to Summer Challenge.
We'll see. Yeah.
Spring into summer. We'll talk about that, and we'll each have, like Jay said, we're going to each have our own. We're going to put some notes together, and then see if we can come to an agreement.
Maybe people vote. We'll figure it out.
Maybe the people will vote.
Present two individual plans, and maybe
the people being Tom, who is Tom will be the deciding vote.
And Ray.
Yeah, Ray ain't
Yeah.
sticking around for this. Actually, Ray may need to stick around for this. That's right.
He may have to.
Okay. All right. We'll see everybody next week on Money in the Law, My FM, and also on the Howells and Hub. Don't go doing anything dumb. We'll see you soon. All right. Bye.
Have a great day.